Okay, good morning, everyone. I am Tom Stafford of the Research and Research Institute, and this is the FIRE Funder Forum, where we will be talking about distributed peer review. Please do say who you are and where you're from in the chat. I'm just going to speak for a few minutes about the FIRE project, and then we'll be on to our speaker, which the talk will be recorded. We'll stop the recording at the end of the official segment, so that we can speak freely during the discussion. And I will remind everyone that that discussion will be held under the Chatham House rule, which is that you'll feel free to report what is said, but not who has said it, so that we can hopefully have an open discussion about this approach to funding. So just a bit about the Research on Research Institute and the FIRE programme. So the Research on Research Institute is dedicated to understanding and improving the research system, and we have 18 core partners shown on the right there, mostly research funders, and we have currently 10 co-designed projects which investigate all aspects of the funding system, from transdisciplinary research to peer review. And we have the FIRE program, which is the experimental arm of RORI, the program, the Accelerator for Innovation and Research Funding Experimentation. And we exist to encourage people as awareness of experimentation and evidence generation in the funding system, and motivation to use that evidence, and to capacity to generate evidence, and a kind of a culture of experimentation and transparent evidence generation in the funding system. And the way we plan to do that is we have three parts of our accelerator shown here as a ramp. We have the forum, which is what we're here today. Anyone can join, and we talk. We try and show off funders who are leading the way in doing experiments. We have support, where we work with individual funder partners to develop capacity to do experiments. And then we want to leap off from there and actually work with funders to do experiments. And that's why it's really exciting to have Hannah here today to talk about the distributed peer review experiment at the Volkswagen Foundation, because that's something that we have been working with the foundation in a kind of scientific advice capacity. So we're coming, we're 6 or 7 in our series of talks in the forum. You can get some of the previous recordings on the website. There's a link there with the QR code. We've got one more coming up in May. You can see our current slot there. But most excitingly for the moment is we are happy to announce that we're going to be running a focused piece of work, which we call a sprint, on developing evaluation experiments on the use of AI in research funding. There's a QR code there, and I'll put the link in the chat when I was finished speaking. We've got the dates already for this. If you are a funder and you are interested in either in learning from other funders and sharing with other funders and influencing other funders on how they can evaluate their use of AI in their processes, we would love to hear from you, because that piece of work will be going ahead starting on May the 27th. So without further ado, I will pass over to Hannah from the Volkswagen Foundation, where she is head of the exploration team there. Perhaps you will share your slides now, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm trying to share my screen, and hopefully the right one, so that I can still see my notes and you only see the presentation. I think it's working, right? The way it should be.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah, okay, great, Tom. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having me here and giving me the opportunity to talk about our experiment with distributed peer review. Actually, at the foundation, we started thinking about implementing distributed peer review I would say in 2022, I guess. And then got that to our board of trustees in 2023 and started the whole experiment in 2024. So there's quite some time that we thought about implementing this and where we can implement it. And I will talk about reasons why we decided to do it. We are actually now already in the second round. I will also be talking about that. So we are quite happy with the experiment, how it worked so far, and we are currently repeating it. I actually talked about the experiment approximately 1 year ago when a fire started. I think it was the kickoff workshop, and that we were then, I think, right after the deadline for the last round. So now I will be able to talk a bit more about the results and not only the setup, but I guess not everyone was there the last time. Okay. So I will also give you a bit of background information why DPR and why we think that that could be an alternative to the classical traditional panel review. So what is DPR actually? Distributed peer review means that applicants for a specific call agree to review other applications that are submitted for the same funding program. So that means everyone who's submitting an application also commits him or herself to review a certain amount of applications that were submitted under the same call. And Volkswagen Foundation is not the first institution to try that and do that. There are, for example, the European Southern Observatory, ESO, who's using DPR for quite some time right now. And I think it's an established mechanism for them to allocate telescope time at the telescopes. And there's also a funding program by the NWO. It's called an XS funding program, where they also use DPR in a slightly different way than we at the foundation are doing it. With DPR, there are some potentials that we also try to verify within the scientific advisory that Tom talked about. One potential or one advantage of DPR is that it actually builds on an accepted mechanism, namely peer review. So that is different, for example, to randomization or partial randomization. So here it's commonly accepted that peer review is a good thing to identify meaningful grants or applications. One potential that for us as a funding organization is especially important is that it solves reviewer recruitment. I guess that's not only us who have problems recruiting reviewers and getting reviewers to review all the applications that we receive. It's getting more and more complicated, especially for this call where we are using DPR. It is for us extremely helpful that applicants receive more feedback and that this feedback may also be more diverse. Our hope as a funding organization is that it makes administrative processes faster and more efficient. So cost savings, time savings might be reasons to use DPR. One nice thing is that since you commit yourself to review applications and commit yourself to submit reviews, we can be sure as a funding organization that we receive enough reviews for the applications, and that also in a timely manner. One thing I especially like is that using DPR can be a mechanism to especially train early career researchers or give them the chance to participate in review processes and benefit from reviewing other proposals and maybe learn more about how grant writing can be done and how grant writing should be done. And one other thing that I especially like about DPR, and especially in the current times, is that DPR makes the grant review more democratized and more diversified compared to a classical panel review where you say you have 8 panel members or 9 or 10 and have this kind of gatekeeping function that a panel sometimes can have. And of course, it is scalable. So the more applicants you have, the more reviewers you have in your pool, which is also nice. Obviously, with every peer review process, there are reservations, and there are also a lot of reservations that we heard about when implementing DPR, and also in the feedback we received is that those who review the applications might not have the right expertise to review the applications they are allocated. They might be biased regarding the proposal writer. There is a lot of discussion about gaming the system. So the worry that people consistently vote or give lower votes to their competitors. Another reservation is the theft of ideas. The call for which we are implementing DPR, it's a call in the humanities and social sciences. Theft of ideas might be more pronounced actually in life sciences. That is something to be discussed. Obviously, time commitment for applicants is higher because they are not only writing the grant application, but also commit themselves to review, in our case, up to 5 applications. And some applicants, that is also something we know from the feedback we already received, don't feel confident enough to review other people's applications. That might be especially relevant for early career researchers. But I mean, keeping in mind that in our case, up to 10 reviews are submitted for each proposal, that might not be as relevant, actually. So why did we at the foundation decide to try or trial DPR? So in generally, we believe that this process has great potential compared to the traditional peer review and could be a good alternative in specific cases for specific funding programs. Basically, regarding all the potentials I said previously. And what we want to do also with this experiment is to see, can we identify funding programs, maybe in terms of disciplinary fit or in terms of the volume of the grant that is given within the funding program, for which DPR could be a good alternative, or could be DPR part of the whole review process and so on. So we are very interested in learning more about this review process, and we as Volkswagen Foundation are also aiming to take a pioneering role as a funding institution in testing these kind of formats. And since we are a private foundation, we also have the capacity and possibilities to do so. And luckily, our board of trustees supported this experiment that we are running. And the foundation also has a history of experimenting with review processes. So we used lottery or partial randomization in the past. And we are using DPR for a call that is named Open Up. It's a, we still call it small grant program, but I wouldn't say it's too small because it's for grants between 350,000 and 450,000. It's for cooperative projects for 2 to 3 researchers, and it's aimed at the humanities and cultural studies. So it's it is a bit interdisciplinary, but it's still, I would say, a relatively homogeneous group of people applying for this call. With Open Up, we had in the past the problem, or we received very high number of applications. So between 150 and 200 in the past, even more, which means that we have to do an internal pre-selection because it's not possible for us to give all these applications to a review panel. We normally have a review panel that consists of 8 to 9 people, and we don't allocate more than 20 proposals to our reviewers normally. That's what we try. So there's an internal pre-selection that is, of course, discussable whether this is good or bad. DPR shows us, or first results actually show us, that we are doing quite a good job in this internal pre-selection, but obviously it's not a peer review in the common sense what we do. I said we have usually a jury or a panel of 8 to 9 people. Obviously, we are not able to cover all the thematic fields that that come with these applications. So also within the panel, expertise is incomplete. And in the past, we had no possibility to give applicants any feedback. So there's no written feedback that we receive with the traditional panel review. Sometimes we have quick assessment with some comments that we can give to the applicants, but especially for early career applicants, obviously it's not very good to don't receive any feedback because they don't have a chance to actually improve their applications, which I think is actually a shame. One advantage of Open Up, I would say, is that from the beginning, Open Up is anonymous. So the applications that are submitted don't include any details on the applicants or the institutions where those people are affiliated, which also makes DPR a bit easier, I would say, because it reduces the risk of bias and maybe also gaming the system. So that's why we decided to use or trial at Open Up. So what is especially interesting, I would say, what we are doing at the foundation is that we are able to implement DPR in parallel to the classical panel review process. So on the next slide, I will show you the process, which makes this a bit clearer maybe. So we actually are running at the moment 2 review processes in parallel. And on the right side, you see the timeline from the first round. So the call was announced in January 2024, and it took around 1 year until the decisions were communicated. That is not new. That is how we also had that in the past with Open Up. We just had to run these 2 processes in parallel. With obviously for the foundation was a bit more work than before because we had to implement the technical details as well, have a platform for the review, and so on. What is of course nice with running these both processes in parallel is that we are able to compare the processes in terms of quality and efficiency and maybe consistency. And we are very lucky that we have our partners from Rory. Tom is here, and I think Anna is also here with us. So it's a team of 4 researchers from the University of Sheffield who have been supporting us from the beginning, actually. Now are working on the analysis and will also be supporting us in the next round, which has been actually great help for us as well. We are only able to run this experiment because our board of trustees agreed to provide additional funding, which means that from both processes, funding recommendations are made. You will also see that on the next slide. So we put more money in this year's and next year's round of Open Up applications so that we can have, let's say, 10 funding recommendations from the panel review and 10 from the DPR. One advantage I already said is that the proposals are quite short and anonymized. So it's only a four-pager, I think, the applications that are submitted, which makes review not that time consuming, which I think is quite helpful. We also have very standardized evaluation forms, a couple of questions regarding the aims of the call that we ask the reviewers to answer. Sorry, my phone is ringing. Let me see. Okay. We provided or still providing some detailed documentation about the DPR, how it's set up, some guidelines. We have online consultation hours for the call where we also talk about the DPR and what that means. And as I said, the first data is now being analyzed, and I will be able to show you some first results. And we also start working on various outputs that should come out of this project. So, for example, a guide on implementing DPR, which could be helpful for some of you if you are interested in trying DPR as well. And there's increasing interest in using this review process. So deadline for the second round of Open Up calls was early April. We received a slightly higher number of applications than last year, which is for us actually a positive confirmation that DPR is not too much work for the applicants, and they still want to apply for the funding. which is for us actually quite nice. And again, a large number of reviewers who can then review the applications. This slide is just to basically show you the both processes and how that worked. And on the upper part, you see the DPR process, and in the lower part, the panel review. We received last year 140 proposals. What we do at the foundation is then an internal screening, basically regarding basic criteria. And then for the panel review, we did the internal shortlisting. So we reduced the number of proposals actually to half of proposals. So 70 proposals were given to the panel members. And in the DPR, all 140 proposals were given into the process and then were matched to the applicants. What we decided to do is that all applicants, so not only the main applicant, but all co-applicants were asked to review proposals. So in total, we had 323 reviewers and then received in total 1,387 reviews from this DPR process. So we decided that we wanted to have 10 reviews per proposal, which translated in 4 to 5 reviews per applicant. What we already found out that there's a good overlap of 60% between those proposals who went in the internal shortlist and also were in the I think upper 70 proposals in the DPR. So a good confirmation that we did something right in the internal shortlisting. What happens next then in the panel review is that we ask the panel members to, before the panel meeting, to give us their first impression via so-called quick assessment sheets. And these quick assessment sheets had the same questions that were also asked in the DPR. So we can also compare the, let's say, evaluation of the panel members based only on the applications before discussing it in the panel meeting and the DPR. And based on the quick assessments, we then decide how many proposals we discuss in the panel meeting. The panel meeting is usually 1 day, so there's limited time. We are not able to discuss 70 proposals, so we usually discuss those who have a very good rating, so a minimum of 1A. So our rating is between A and C. In the panel meeting, then we discussed 42 proposals. And from these 42 proposals, 11 proposals were recommended for funding. And from the DPR, we decided beforehand that we want to have 10 the best 10 proposals recommended for funding. And what you can see here in the end, 18 proposals were funded because there's an overlap of 3 proposals that were recommended in both processes. This is just some numbers. As I said, we decided that we wanted to have at least 4, or that we decided that applicants review between 4 and 5 proposals, and this is just a distribution. So 218 applicants reviewed 4, and 104 applicants reviewed 5 applications. And in the end, we have 127 proposals that received 10 reviews and 13 that only received 9 reviews. But still a large number of reviews per application. And here are some first results. What you see is a distribution of proposal ratings. As I said, our scale that we use varies between A+, outstanding, and C-. And you can see here the number of votes that were actually given on average. And this is a distribution of raw votes, again, along the scale, which is actually a nice shape. What is maybe more interesting for you to see is this slide. So what we see here is the proposals ranked according to their DPR rank, basically. And depending on the colors, you can see which proposals are have been funded under the panel and the DPR, which are the blue ones, 3, as I said previously. Then we have the what is magenta type of color, the DPR funded proposals, and then the yellow ones are those who are funded via the panel review process. So what you see here is that there are some proposals that would have not been funded if we had only used DPR, which I guess is not surprising. So before starting the experiment, we actually talked a lot in the group about what would we actually expect, what would we think would be a good outcome. And so my first impression was, yeah, I mean, if there's the same outcome in the DPR and the panel, this would be nice, because then we can only do DPR in the future, and could make our life easier. But obviously, I guess even if we had 2 panel meetings or 2 different panels, we wouldn't get the same result. And it's difficult to say whether now the DPR or the panel review result is better. And actually defining criteria to say what is a better result is quite difficult. So that's something maybe we can discuss, because this is one of the key points, actually, I guess, that is interesting for us. Now looking basically the other way around, to see what proposals are selected from the DPR within the panel review, I would say. So you see here, there's one proposal that is funded by the DPR that didn't make the shortlist. This proposal didn't make the shortlist because we within the foundation thought it's not that innovative, and it was a proposal that basically fit into a funding program that we had previously, and that is something we usually don't do, that we fund proposals that could have been funded in different funding programs. There's one proposal funded by DPR which we didn't discuss in the panel meeting because it had a not very good quick assessment evaluation, and then some we discussed, but then in the end the panel decided not to recommend for funding. This is something maybe Tom can say a bit more later on. So this is the result of a simulation exercise, if I say it correctly. And I remember also the last time we discussed about DPR here in this forum, we talked a lot about what would be the optimal number of reviews we wanted to receive for each application, and why we decided to make it 10. We actually decided to make it 10 because we followed ESO in this regard. But this here shows that more reviews can be helpful, but there's no peak, actually no optimal number of reviews. And it seems that at a specific number of reviews, there's not much more benefit of having one additional review, actually. Yeah? So it would be possible for us to reduce the number of proposals by 1 for each review and still receive a very similar result, which is quite nice, because obviously it's also a reduction in workload for each applicant if they have to review 1 less application. One thing we also asked is about the time spent reviewing. That's something we asked within the DPR, but I think also the panel. And overall, more time is spent reviewing proposal because there's just more people involved, but it's more equally distributed across all these reviewers. So they said that they spend on average 4 hours reviewing all allocated proposals with this, which is, I think, okay amount of time. And as you see, the time spent by the panel is obviously much higher because they review up to 20 proposals, which takes a lot of time. We have the panel meeting. And again, there's lots of time also spent here at the foundation because we have to find reviewers, we have to prepare the panel meeting, we have to do the the pre-selection, the shortlist, and so on. So there's lots of time involved at the foundation that could potentially be reduced by using DPR, especially now when we're doing it the second time, because yeah, setting it up the first time was quite time consuming, but now if you have a running system, it's obviously easier. What is also nice is that all proposals received attention under the DPR. That is something we don't have in the panel review because of this internal pre-selection. What we asked at the time of the application were some expectations regarding DPR, all the applicants, which was luckily quite positive. So when people applied last year, they were quite positive about DPR, and that DPR would be a good process to identify good proposals and good research, and maybe also more adventurous proposals, which is also quite important for us because Open Up is a funding program that's actually looking for explorative and innovative research in the humanities. So that is also a very important question for us, whether DPR is able, compared to panel review, to identify these more adventurous projects, or whether it identifies more mainstream, or if panel review identifies more mainstream projects. What we did as well is, so as I showed in the timeline, the applicants received after the decision also feedback from the DPR process. So all the reviewers were asked to give comments and voting, obviously, and we circled these comments back to the applicants, and then asked them also about how they feel about the feedback or the comments they received. That also looks quite positive. We asked about the constructiveness of each review and yeah, the helpfulness. Most of the funded applicants, which is probably no surprise, would take part in DPR again, so they actually enjoyed it. The number is a bit lower with the unfunded applicants, which is probably yeah, not too surprising. Yeah, they might not feel treated fairly by the DPR, but keep in mind that they actually had the possibility to be funded by 2 channels. So yeah, this might be a general thing. So what is currently ongoing is qualitative analysis. So our partners are running interviews with applicants, but also panel members and staff from the foundation. So you see here the target population is obviously successful and unsuccessful applicants. We try to have a broad representation of disciplines and also levels of seniority, gender balance, of course. And the questions are around, yeah, time and workload, experience as a reviewer, but also regarding the feedback, the DPR process in general, and also the future of this approach. So it's a very broad questions. I have some preliminary results, but it's still ongoing as far as I'm aware. So the aim is to have 25 interviews conducted, and I think we are by 13, 15 or so. So it's ongoing. And what comes out of the interviews is that there is, of course, concern, especially regarding gaming in DPR. So that comes up quite often in the feedbacks. Also, when we present DPR in different occasions, gaming the system is always a topic. Then the concern that the review process is outsourced and that there's more pressure, especially on early career researchers. With this, which is a fair point, I would say, but still also talking about the potential that can go along with this for early career researchers. Obviously, it's time and workload commitment. Yeah, that's what you have with every peer review process. It's just a different distribution here. Who is now doing the time and the workload? We received positive feedback that the short proposal format is good in this context because it's easier than to do the review. and that there's less concern over scooping, so there's no concern about theft of ideas, which is also positive, I think. We have some experiences regarding being a reviewer and also receiving the feedback. So obviously the disciplinary fit is sometimes inconsistent. So what we did is when matching proposals to reviewers, we used the DFG classification, the disciplinary qualification, which is quite broad. So it is possible that you receive an application where you are not an expert, and that might be then difficult for you to review this proposal. But this also is happening in the panel allocation. Yeah. So and this is also what we intend with this call, that it is set up as an interdisciplinary call, and what counts is the idea. And that is something the applicant should bring abroad in their application. I think there were actually some people that that said that they had tried to game the system, so that they evaluated lower than they actually would have done otherwise. But I think that was only 1 or 2 people. And the experience that DPR looked more on the ideas and panel more on the quality of the proposals. And one very important point, which we also try to address in the current round, is that to make the criteria of the call quite clear, so that since there's no discussion in the DPR, to make quite clear what criteria should be addressed when reviewing the proposals. Yeah, some feedback that was given was superficial or lacked understanding, especially those who did not receive funding were a bit more critical than those who were successful. They tended to feel that feedback was very constructive. I also talked to some people who really enjoyed reading all these other applications and learning about new topics and approaches. So it's actually quite diverse. So advantages and disadvantages of panel and DPR, it's probably, I mean, what we have here is not new. It's we probably already know it. Panel is a well-established form of review. We know it, we are used to it. It's our gold standard, I would say. So everything else has to compare to the panel. What we see is that the discussion in the panel meeting seems to play quite an important role. And that can be positive or negative. Yeah, DPR makes it easier to find reviewers, obviously, because you already have all the applicants. That obviously depends also on those applying, whether you have good applicants who are able to do the review. We have more feedback. We hope that it favors innovative and impactful work over the traditional ivory tower discussions, and the speed of the process can be a big advantage. But then again, gaming the system, as I said, always comes up. So what happens now and what is coming up is that the quantitative and qualitative analysis is ongoing. I mentioned in the beginning that there are some outputs that we are planning to have. So a DPR guide, especially for funders, if they are interested in implementing DPR, and what could be helpful to consider if you want to introduce DPR, a technical report, which is more for the foundation, and peer-reviewed papers. So we will be present at the ICSSI in Copenhagen, and also hopefully at the Meta Science Conference in London in July. And yeah, we are currently repeating the experiment, so there will be more data to come and more results hopefully in the next round. And what I also mentioned in the beginning is there's growing interest from many other funders to implement it. And we are very lucky that we are in good contact with different funders and to discuss on DPR, and especially at these conferences, how we can push DPR forward maybe and have it as a established alternative to the panel review process. Yeah, I would want to give a big thank you to our supporters at the University of Sheffield. I already mentioned it. It's a team of 4 researchers that are supporting us with the qualitative and quantitative analysis. Thanks very much. It's a pleasure working with you. And now I come to an end. Very, very abruptly. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Hannah. Yeah, it's been really great to work with you on this. I think it's a really great example of the kind of Rory model of how hopefully we've been able to do more together than either kind of the researchers or the funders could do on their own. Can we